Welcome back, everybody. You got Will and I Man here from the Block Runner MetaZone, Rovi, and Mscribe, and today we thought we'd give you a DMT update.
As we must, as we do.
All right.
Let's do it. So last week we talked about, I think, a lot of things, even if it was last week. Last DMT update video centered around specifically, I think, just like a Cambrian explosion event of different UNAT deployments out there.
Yeah. On-chain assets just getting displayed on Mscribe and all those things.
Yeah, because there's, as the ecosystem as a whole for DMT is only 4 months old, roughly.
That's right. Yeah.
Pretty fucking brand new still.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're talking about like in human years.
It feels like a couple of years now, but
I know, like it's
weird.
It's pretty insane, isn't it?
Yeah.
But if you're actually thinking about it from like a time perspective, like this is an infant child that needs a lot of care.
It's a 4-month-year-old.
Yeah, you should know how much nurturing and care and everything else like an infant requires, right?
Yeah, like Bitcoin. It took 10 years before it really like piqued people's attention.
Yeah, now look at it.
Yeah, now it's an ETF.
Well, it's 15, right?
Well, 10 years to really like get a ton of traction and start being considered as an ETF participant.
Yeah, but I guess like from a human age perspective,
it's 15 years old. Yeah,
15 is like what 15-year-olds typically don't really do much.
They don't.
But this is quite the impressive teenager, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're on a totally different weird tangent now.
Yeah.
Like comparing protocols to like humans as far as like time spans and shit. But
yeah, it's really trying to figure out, get some perspective on like the development of things. So speaking of teenagers, we have like a tweet here. It says, whoever shielded these needs to put on a list. So I was thinking, well, what kind of list? Like Santa's, happy list or
the naughty list?
Or the naughty list? Like what list are you referring to?
Yeah, but as soon as I saw it, I almost immediately understood. Like what he was, I don't know, like it definitely wasn't something positive, right? It's like, because we know how this market thinks and acts, right? It's like everything is centered around spot price of any given moment in time, right?
Yeah.
That is like the dictator of this
like
is
value.
Well, real-time sentiment, and like this is how I need to like engagement farm as an influencer type. Or
Sure.
And like get the eyeballs, right? So it's like, hey, this thing is down 60%. I remember like a couple of weeks ago, every influencer in the world was like saying this is the next big thing.
Yeah.
Right? Oh, how much can change in 2 weeks? Now it's like the I told you so types are out and about.
Yeah.
You're like, see, failed experiment. This was completely dumb from the beginning. Anybody who actually was telling you that it wasn't, you should put them on basically the blacklist of like all time. Like you should go directly to Elon Musk.
Yeah.
Twitter accounts need to be banished for now and forever.
Right.
I'm kind of
being facetious. Yeah.
But I think that's what he meant.
Yeah, that's what he's talking about here. So basically anyone who shilled Natcats should be put on this list of like probably do not listen to people.
Or maybe even more. It's like Diddy's execution list or something.
Yeah, fairy dust list.
Fairy dust. Just sprinkle a little bit like while they're not looking, and they're just going to die of natural causes.
Right.
Like, that's how much of an egregious offense we've committed, right? Because we are definitely on that list.
Yeah, for sure. Put us on the list.
Yeah, put us on the list.
As a matter of fact, I should reply here. But yeah, I mean, if you look at some of these comments, like they're saying the same thing. It's like, put me on the list. It's like, the tech is cool. But ultimately, just like anything else, is like you told me stories like when you were looking at Bitcoin and it was down 85% back in like 2015, 2013. Yeah. And I was like, it's down 85%. I was like, yeah, I knew this was like a scam. Like,
I was just like this Moon character. It's like whoever told you Bitcoin was like a good investment,
right?
Like, they should be fucking exiled from all of society, right? And I bought into that sentiment. That is again navigated by spot valuation, which at the time was probably like $100 or something,
right?
$100 Bitcoin is like,
it's like, good thing I'm not buying this trash.
Yeah, dude. Fuck. Yeah. So if I would have listened to people like this and ignored and not done anything like further due diligence on my own,
right?
Doing my own research, I would have actually figured out. I was like, you know what? This is probably a good opportunity.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But I didn't do that. I listened to the influencers, dude. Very dangerous.
So basically, if you see a tweet like this and you see something like take off in terms of traction and like social media traction, it makes sense to just look into it and understand like where it comes from and why it even exists in the first place. Because it could be like a pump and dump. It could be. But you got to look into it and verify. Right?
Yeah, but if like these contentious FUD attempts were like at least addressing some of the underlying like value propositions that are actually being brought about, like, specifically
absolutely.
towards like digital matter theory,
Sure.
pattern recognition, whether or not that's a worthy like
if he
addition.
said like DMTs like makes no sense.
Yeah.
Pattern recognition is a waste of time.
Here's why arbitrary is better than non-arbitrary. Like, that is a valid contentious.
Sure, absolutely.
I want to actually see people bring out these like real case arguments.
These
right?
opposite arguments.
I haven't seen that yet. Really, it's just people who are just, again, looking at price and being like, we told you so. I was like, hey, look at these fucking cats. There's better cats out there, guys. Don't be stupid.
Right.
So it's like, fuck.
Okay. Yeah. All right, moving on.
Let's move on.
All right.
So, yeah.
So Terrabits is interesting. I think we talked about them in the past, but I think they have an angle here for runes. So everybody's talking about runes.
Mm-hmm.
DMT and Terrabits have a rune play. So something to pay attention to. Another one, Natdiamonds. So this one got pretty popular as well.
Yeah.
And they're taking, I guess, a symmetrical pattern, and they're equating symmetry to like the visual representation of a diamond, which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah, I think so too. I think
so. Palindromes plays a huge role here.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. This symmetry has to be rooted to something within like the on-chain information, right? And palindromes make the most sense because it's like a numeric representation of symmetry.
Yeah.
So it's like, the diamonds, I guess, configuration mimics that.
Yeah.
As closely as possible. So just try to like draw this parallel to, again, physical reality. How diamonds, they're so ubiquitous. There's a lot of them. They're not as scarce as like,
as you would think.
As Tiffany and Jared.
Yeah.
Like to make you think when you're going to buy your
that Tiffany and Jared, man.
Those motherfuckers, dude. They're making you think these things are like super valuable. Because there's a whole industry out there like, propping that up. But anyways, but there are actually true scarcity within this like abundant pool of carbon, whatever the fuck, constructs.
Yeah.
And they're basically based on non-arbitrary symmetry, right?
Yeah, I thought you were going to say there's true scarcity in pattern recognition on Bitcoin, because that is an accurate statement.
Correct. Well, that's what I'm saying. So the real life parallel is like, you can actually observe looking into these things and see that there's something about this is that doesn't exist in like the larger pool.
Yeah. I mean, it's a low entropy state. That's what a diamond is, right?
Correct. So I mean, then these things are also occurring on Bitcoin, right?
Correct.
And that's the whole point of extracting these occurrences through pattern recognition.
Yeah.
Right? And that's what Natdiamonds represents.
Yeah, I think this is like a good representation, or like a visualization of of that fact being applied visually, right? So.
Agreed. Now, what this turns into, we'll see. I don't know. Maybe the market forms around this. The consensus is, these are like the first closest attempt we have to real, digital diamonds, like something of real notable existence, digital existence, right? So, let's create digital fucking swag out of this, dude. Let's drip ourselves out in the metaverse.
Sure.
Who knows? That's kind of like the experiment here.
So in another experiment, we had Natconics. They have a pretty high fidelity art already. You can see that on Mscribe. So all this stuff is on chain. And as you can see here on Magic Eden, you have like basically the same art, but this is on chain and this is off chain. Does that matter? Well, it kind of does. So when you look at Natimated Cats, you see here it's kind of slight, but these cats are animated.
Yes, let's keep it still for a second. Oh, there you go.
Yeah, like here's a good example.
Yeah.
Right.
And then their tails wagging a little, well, not wagging, just kind of like
moving up and down.
And the ears, and I think even the nose. So yeah, it is very subtle, but nonetheless.
Yeah.
This is executed on chain.
Exactly. This is all on-chain stuff. And so why does that matter? Because sometimes off-chain stuff, it isn't reflection of like accuracy, right? Because you have the same thing here.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, that's Mscribe's real motivation is like is to ensure like all these things that are being generatively, I guess, produced on chain, specifically on Bitcoin.
Yeah.
What you see on display is it's being pulled from that, right?
Yeah.
We're not asking these creators to manually send individually these GIFs, I guess,
correct.
right? Yeah. It's all being pulled from on chain, right?
Yeah. All right. So finally we have UNAT Pepe is another cool one. I think this is the one that BitGod was enjoying.
It's pretty cool. And we've We should have included them in our last DMT update, but we didn't. So big
Yeah.
fumble on our part. Shout out to the UNAT Pepe crew.
Yeah, and
for
I'm sure there's some that we're missing as well.
A ton. I
Yeah.
know. Yeah, that's one of the crazy things. I mean, there's been like over, I think, 100
Mm-hmm.
UNAT deployments specifically since this portion of the DMT
Yeah, since
framework.
Natcats, basically.
Yeah, since Natcats. Natcats generated. Genesis was probably like maybe 5 or 6 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So since then, there's been more than 100 of these different interpretations of how do I create unique non-arbitrary tokens, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we didn't expect it to kind of like proliferate this quickly.
Yeah, definitely not.
But yeah, now we're approaching a stage where we're starting to identify pain points, and you know, the ecosystem is demanding certain, I guess, like infrastructure additions to kind of, you know, combat these things, such as like, you know, concentration of holder counts and stuff
True.
like that.
Yeah. We're
We're
gonna
going
be
to
talking
speak
about
on that in a second. Yeah.
Yeah. Another person here, B-Ways, has been chiming in with like DMT angles and NAT angles on like just explaining it, and he does a pretty good job on this one here. So definitely recommend reading. But this one ultimately explains the value proposition of non-arbitrary tokens being a value angle for miners, right? And so miners will be able to extract the value of these tokens because they occur every single block.
Correct.
Right, in the same case as Bitmap does.
Yeah. So definitely read through this. This is a good, like, again, we were talking earlier about influencer types. You were so quick to pull the trigger on like the FUD without doing any actual research into like what is interesting about this specific asset and the ecosystem behind it and such. Definitely, this is an example of somebody who did do that due diligence and has like an actual understanding of what's happening.
Yeah. All right.
And then here's another one.
Yeah, another one. So Rebecca, I think we did a Twitter space with them recently. And we spent a good like 2 hours just talking about DMT, NATs with Natcats guy, EV. And this one is basically breaking down the longest tweet I've ever seen, I think.
Correct.
On DMT, NAT stuff. And it goes into real deep depth here.
Deep depth, eh?
Yeah. So, all right, finally. An announcement, we are going to be partnering up with Redacted. They have like really cool art, and what we're going to be focusing on is like a release of this, I guess, fair and balanced distribution. We've had the fair and open distribution method for DMT and NAT tokens, where basically anybody can just go and claim as many as you can possibly claim, right?
Yeah.
However, your wallet kind of allowed. But a lot of the creators didn't really appreciate like that distribution method because it could be really co-opted by like a small group of people. And all of a sudden, a pretty good art could have like a, handful of holders, right? Like 200 or 300, whatever it is.
Correct.
And so as a creator, you want you want like a good number of holders.
Yeah.
And so we need a better distribution method. And so what we're doing is we're building this like technology with Track that allows the distribution method to be a little bit more balanced. So the way that we do that is we allow creators to select how many mints per wallet. It could be 1, could be 10. It's up to them.
Yeah.
Set a price. The price could be free, right? It's up to them. It could be any price.
Yeah.
White lists, things like that. So all that's going to be possible through Mscribe.
Yeah, this is important too, not just, for one, it opens up, I think, the ecosystem maturing to a point where, you're going to attract, content creators who are very serious about what it is they're introducing to the market as far as like a product.
Yeah.
This is something they want to have longevity or like application into the future, maybe into the metaverse and beyond and such. So
yeah,
you need to have certain parameters in place to kind of like support that kind of ecosystem growth.
Yeah,
right?
100%.
So these are very necessary. Also, it just introduces more flexibility and dynamic opportunity for UNAT deployers across the board, right? Because they're not all going to be like JPEG artists. At some point, we're going to have, metaverse content creators,
applications,
musicians.
That's right. Yeah. So here's an example of what the art looks like on the right, and we've seen some of the art that they haven't disclosed to the public yet, and it looks really cool, right? There's like some interesting kind of like attributes associated with some of these guys. Like for example, this one.
Yeah, I like these a lot actually.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of interest and demand building up for sure. So we don't have details yet as far as when the actual drop's happening, but partnerships out there, it's in full swing, and we have like a pretty unique, I think, mint experience that we're gonna kind of like try and execute on, deliver alongside this mint.
Yeah, it's gonna be cool, right? It's gonna be something unique that no one's really ever seen before. So, all right, guys, that's it for us. I appreciate you guys for watching. If we missed anything as far as DMT related,
which I'm sure we did.
Yeah, definitely let us know in the comment section below. And I appreciate you guys for watching, and we will catch you in the next video.
Peace.